Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Success is Complicated podcast. I am your host, RaQuel.
And I am your co-host, Cieara.
Today, we are going to talk about finding your inner voice. What does it look like to know that you're actually following what's within? And we're going to kind of wing it a little bit and just use our personal experiences to address it. And I tried to change the topic, but Cieara was like, no, let's just do it. So I'm going to throw it on back to you then.
Okay, so when I think about following your...
Wait, how was your week?
I had a great week.
Yeah, I
had a great week. How was yours?
I had a good week.
That's good. And before we even move forward, let's talk about yesterday was RaQuel's birthday. I'm not going to tell y'all how old she turned because that's up to her to do, but I do want to say on air, happy birthday, RaQuel.
Thank you.
Did you want to say
anything? No, I ain't got nothing. I mean, that was yesterday. It's not my birthday. Like, it's not much more to say beyond
we can
that.
keep celebrating because, people celebrate all month,
I'm not people. Well, we said, let's talk about your own inner voice, right?
Right.
I called T yesterday and I had told her, I was like, I woke up. I didn't wake up with mixed emotions, but by the time that I was up, I had some mixed emotions in terms of what celebrating should look like. And she was like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, well, I mean, shouldn't it be kind of extra? Shouldn't you be like broadcasting it to some degree? And she was like, I mean, how do you think it should be? Because people do celebrate their birthdays differently. I don't know which one. Is it different or differently? It don't matter. Different? Okay. You said that like, matter of fact, you for sure?
Look,
you for sure?
Grammar police out there, check us.
Or don't. No, but yesterday I was like, man, how is this supposed to feel?
Mm-hmm.
Like, am I supposed to feel as content as I do and just like grateful for like the experience, or am I supposed to like, I don't know, like maybe doing some of the things that we would have done in the past? And I was thinking about, because my birthday always falls on spring break. Like, we're always taking like, a trip out of the country, and we're not necessarily doing that. And I was like, this might be a basic birthday. Like, I was like really started playing like tricks on myself.
Right.
And then I realized, like, even during those times, I wasn't as happy as I am today.
Ooh.
And then once I realized, like, I wasn't as happy as I am today, I was like, it's okay to like, to feel this way. Like, this is it's not fleeting anymore.
Right.
It only started to feel like it possibly could have been fleeting because I started to think about what it should be like. So, people had wished me happy birthday on like social media, and I did not repost any of it, but I didn't necessarily, it wasn't that I didn't want to be celebrated. I just didn't want necessarily, it's not what I had wanted.
So it's not where you're at right now.
It's not where I'm at right now.
I guess, how do you feel like that was listening to your inner voice, right?
I felt like I wasn't following, like, how you were just saying, like people celebrate all month, right? Like, depending on the day, I mean, it could be April for me. If I decide that I want to just do something, then I will. And it doesn't have to be attached to my birthday.
Right.
But I did have a great day yesterday. Like, my husband planned out a whole day, and we had a fantastic time just connecting with each other. And when you start to think about like what really matters, like that matters to me. Now, I'm not saying that goodbye to the trips and stuff that we used to do, but it did feel like, I guess, content. Like, it felt like it wasn't about like all of the external things. And I'll be honest, like sometimes, like, I feel like more is better. or like it is your birthday, so allow people to celebrate you. But I mean, I have great friends and all, so I always feel celebrated. So I don't know. I had started making up some stories. So I did feel like once I got off the phone with you, like I had felt good because even at some point I was looking at that baby yesterday, girl, and I was like, I did not imagine waking up on my birthday with this badass baby, like just moving all over the place. Like this is not what I had imagined. And then like it was like I had lost like that sense of like gratitude in that moment because like one, I didn't see myself having a second kid, right?
Right.
And to wake up and be experiencing like all of the funness that Cam brings into our family is it's a beautiful thing. And I think that for me, following my inner voice is not getting caught up on how people say you should spend your birthday or what it should look like. Like I am like happy, like
Right.
consistently, like it's not changing, and it starts to change when I start listening to like the noise outside, or even starting to look at what people may be doing on social media or how they do it. So that was a challenge for me. I'm not gonna say it was a challenge for me because it felt normal, it felt right for me.
Right.
But it's when I got in my own head.
So, RaQuel, you bring up an interesting point because what I hear you saying is like not listening to the noise, right? And I think a lot of times when we are listening to something that may not necessarily be our inner voice, it's actually noise, right? It's the societal constructs, it's what people have made up that a celebration should look
Right.
like, or how you should respond to a situation.
But then no, I mean, we were talking about that on the last episode that has not, well, that will have been dropped by then, but like you create meaning. Like there's no inherent meaning in life. Like we create it, we assign it, and
Right.
when you're able to do that, I think that that's when happiness starts to feel less and less like it's fleeting,
Right.
all the time, because you realize like you're in control, so to speak.
Right, right. And I think that is the how listening to your how you know when you're listening to your inner voice is characterized, right? Because it's not necessarily
It's not guided by
right, it's not
anybody
guided.
else or anything else. It's not guided.
And when I think about the times that I have listened to my inner voice, right? I had, most of the time you have people telling you that things should be a certain way or you should
Right.
do something.
Right. Like, and I'm glad you didn't take that position yesterday. Like, girl, you should or we should be doing. I mean, we have our what we're gonna do next week together
Right.
as friends, but it is like you should be doing, because a lot of times when people like, oh, you got doing. I mean, I didn't know what was planned yesterday because Danny had planned today. But you tell people, I don't really know what you have planned. I'm like, oh, what? You should be celebrating. Say it's who,
Right.
and who gets to determine what celebrating really looks like for you. Because I had a really good time yesterday. I felt good.
And I actually fell into that when you were getting your second master's, right? I was like, girl, you should you should be going to that graduation. You should be like celebrating, like this is a big accomplishment. And RaQuel was just like, yeah, I mean it is, but I'm okay. Like I don't need to be at that graduation. And I'm like, you need to be at that graduation.
Right. And I'm glad that you bring that up because to be honest, it's showing up in a lot of different ways in my life. I mean, this past Christmas was about like doing less because we can end up buying our kids like a lot of stuff.
Right.
And Kaden had only asked for like an iPhone and like Roblox. But I'll be honest, in my mind, I was like, that's only like 2 things. Like,
right.
And you envision like having a lot of stuff. And on the morning of Christmas, I was like, he ain't really get anything. Like, I started to like get inside my head again. And my baby was so happy, like, because he got what he had asked for.
Right.
Yeah. And it wasn't about all of the other things, especially, and sometimes I'm like, they don't even play with half of that stuff. Like it be us. But I'm telling you, like, I feel like that's how life has continued to present things for me because I've lived a great life. I done had a good time. Like,
Right.
we done had a good time. Like,
Right.
the experiences, the exposure that exposure we have gotten. So like when you say, because that's been like all within a matter of 4 months between Christmas, my birthday, and the graduation. But I feel a sense of like calmness. I feel a sense of calmness.
Right. And I really love that because it's being able to like be in a season that doesn't necessarily look like prior seasons, but the I guess the okayness with it. I don't even know if that's a word, but the okayness with it.
It sounds like a word. I'm all for making up your own words.
Right. To be in a season that looks different and not take anything away from yourself or your experience is just like beautiful.
Well, thank you, because it does feel. It feels weird though because it's so new. There's a part of me that tugs on to the past about like, you sure you're doing it right? But I mean, if there's no reason why I should be questioning my happiness at this point. Like, I even had told Danny that last night. I was like, I am like happy. I was like, I haven't always been like this happy. Girl, you need a tissue. You need a tissue.
This eye.
You need a tissue.
It's like,
well, this is. So, I mean, I think that's one way, and I'm glad that we, we bring up the birthday thing. But I was thinking about like in a society today where there's so much access to information,
right,
that it can be overwhelming. So much so, and I know I keep on saying this about research because I feel like they're onto something, but this is not the part that we really want that people are wanting to hear. But research really says that like we are in over our heads. Like, people will not be able to meet the modern demands of the world. And I think about like, as we've grown up, we didn't have social media and all those things. I would imagine that technology is just going to continue to advance. But when I hear like people will not be able to meet the modern demands of the world, it makes me think about just how important it is to be able to listen to your voice.
Right.
Because there's always going to be something new.
Right.
Things are always going to be changing, but I think about like how does that leave us as a society?
Right.
And when you do like start like I think about, I'm gonna go back to therapy. I just think about I had saw a post. Go ahead, you talk, girl. I had seen this post.
So when I guess I really don't understand what you're saying when you say that people aren't going to be able to meet the modern demands of life. But I do feel like we're creating a culture where everything is socialized, right? It's based on a social construct and not necessarily what your inner voice is telling you about what's right or what's wrong or where you should be going. But you look like you found it.
I found the post. So it said, when you're from a dysfunctional family, healthy boundaries are viewed as threatening. Making an observation, expressing an expectation, refusing to be involved in chaos, or expressing a different viewpoint will likely lead to you being labeled as mean, funny acting, or weird. Not going along with the typical chaos can seem like you're trying to make waves in the family. The truth is, you are making waves. You're breaking the cycle of dysfunction, and that isn't always well received by others. And when I read this, man, I get it, right? Because I have actually felt this way. Like, y'all are dysfunctional. I just want to be able to separate it. And I know what they're referring to, right? Because, I think that we both have heard, like, y'all trying to raise them kids like white folks do.
Right.
Or, like, 'cause that's exactly what that means, because we're choosing to do it differently. And what I realize is, I don't think that is what people what like the prior generation is I don't think that that's what they mean really. And I think that when you go to call something dysfunctional, one is we talk about blame a lot of the times, right? It's still rooted in blame, which you had said last time in the podcast that it takes away like responsibility.
Right.
And I think what people don't realize is like when you talk about society, the research is starting to say that we're in over our heads. Most people won't be able to meet the modern demands of the world. Is that we're moving from very traditional ways of doing things, and I would imagine that things are supposed to get better over time.
Right. Every generation is probably gonna, do it a little different.
Yes.
Get it. I ain't gonna say get it right, because then that will play into dysfunction. But grow. Every generation grows to some degree.
And I think that post dismisses. It makes me just going back to like, to me that like, cause what's interesting. So just going back to the socialized mindset, right? They say like over 60% of the population is in there. And when I look at like this account has millions of followers. Now, granted, I understand what the intent is, but it's a reflection of where people really are today.
Right.
Because if something challenges that, most people probably won't follow that because they haven't really learned to listen to their inner voice. Now, I like the content of what they're putting out because I understand what the intent is, right?
Right.
But just because a person helps you change doesn't mean that they are supporting you in developing. And I think that when you start to talk about like dysfunction, right? I always say that I don't like the word. It's not that I don't like the word. I just think that language is not necessarily universal. And when professionals are putting this information out, I think that there's a responsibility that comes with it. And part of the responsibility is to educate so that people really feel like they can choose for themselves. And I think that that's where the piece is about, like, we won't be able to meet modern demand, so to speak. So going back to it, so we talking about dysfunctional family. I had started thinking the other day, like, all right, what do they mean when they say dysfunction? Like, if we were to think about like where our parents were, in terms of like mindset, right?
Right.
There were clear answers for everything.
Right.
If you challenge those answers, you probably were going to get in trouble.
Right.
Probably very frustrated when anything seemed too complex. Like, for example, talking about your feelings and your emotions, like, it can be challenging. Do as I say, like, follow my rules. Developmentally, that makes sense to me. Like, that they were where they were. And I think oftentimes we say, like, you meet people where you are. If we're meeting people where they are, well, then what makes it dysfunctional? Because if I say, like, Cieara, the way that you run your household is dysfunctional, one, it's a judgment, and what I'm saying is it's not normal.
Or it's wrong.
Or is wrong. And when you go back to like how our parents were raised and just like what their parents were just coming out of, to me, it makes sense. I'm not saying that it makes it right, but it makes sense. And I think that what ends up happening is, just like anything else, like, we start to form our own opinions as children based off of what we see and say, that's not for me. I would like to choose to do it differently. For example, everybody is choosing therapy today. Everybody is choosing healing. I don't think it's any different. I don't think that we're any different from them in that sense. Like, we have more access to technology. We have more access to resources. I don't know, we're exposed to it. Well, there's an opportunity to be exposed to a lot of different things, and I think that we like to create like this separation and not able to see all of the things that play into being a human, I guess. Like,
Right, and what that makes me think about, Rockwell, when you say all that you said, is that we can do things differently and still have the same or desired outcome, which you and I talked about the other day, right? Well, you can grow up in this house that seems to be dysfunctional, but yet you still seem to must persevere and push through adversity. Or you can grow up in a house where there seems to be less dysfunction, and you hit all the milestones that the other person does as well. So I think calling things dysfunctional is it's just really, really tricky. And I think that whenever you're dealing with humans, you always have to listen to your inner voice, right? Because we all require different things.
Right. And I think being able to find that balance in terms of what you need, because I don't like therapy. Like, when I say I don't like therapy for myself, but that doesn't mean that if I felt like my kids needed to attend therapy, like, I'm open to it. If I feel like it's a great recommendation for a family member or a friend, like, I'll say it. But understanding that because I don't want to talk about problems, I don't want to talk about the past unless I were to find a great therapist that is able to support me in moving forward and just challenging the way that I think. But I think that there's something in, because facilitating change, because that's what a lot of people are trying to do, right? They're trying to grab tools and skills that they feel like they haven't necessarily had. But just because, and I go back and I'm going to say this again, just because something changes you doesn't mean that it necessarily develops you. If you think about your kids, right? Like, if you're trying to alter their behavior and you didn't beat their tail for example,
right?
Just because they now know that I'm gonna get my ass whipped, the behavior may change, but developmentally you may have slowed down their process in other ways, because maybe you've created fear, you've instilled inferiority, to where they're not comfortable having conversations with you. You start to silence their voices. So I think that it's important to recognize that change doesn't necessarily mean that you are developing.
Right. Change doesn't mean that you're developing. I actually like that, especially when it comes to just children in general, because as parents, we try to alter and guide their path. We try to make their paths, right? And
even though we say that we're not today.
Right.
We say that we're not.
What are we doing if we ain't trying to alter or make their paths?
No, I would agree to some degree where we are trying to position them for success,
right?
For whatever that looks like. And sometimes, as parents, some of us have a greater clarity of what success. Why you keep looking at my hands when they move? And you're distracting me. Like,
who is it? Because your hands keep moving.
Oh, okay. Well, I will put them in, because stop looking at my hand. I'm like, what's the problem?
Y'all cut that out.
No, we're not gonna cut that out. Kind of going back to I told you that this topic was an interesting one. Right. I don't know that we're necessarily talking about what it means. I think that we still are talking about what it means to follow your own voice.
So we're going to jump into a personal experience. I didn't know if I was going to share this or not, but I think it's something that a lot of women deal with. I guess women who have children deal with when they are no longer with their child's father, right? Mm-hmm. And that is that's the decision to take out child support or to not take out child support, right? And the reason why I'm going to talk about this, because I feel like this was a clear instance of me following my inner voice. And how did I know I was following my inner voice is because.
So wait, what did you decide to do?
I'm gonna get
take him out? Oh, okay.
Go ahead, ask the question.
Did you take him? Is he on child support or is he not on child support, child?
He's not on child support.
Okay.
He's not on child support. However, I still feel like he.
And how old is your daughter?
My daughter is 15.
Okay. All right.
And him and I haven't been together since she was 3.
Okay.
So, at the time, my life was very, very, very different than what it is today.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents, I guess anybody that loved and cared about us was like, girl, you need to put his ass on child support.
I may have been that one too. I ain't gonna lie. I probably did say, not today, but I think I said that too. Girl, you ain't putting him on child support yet. Girl.
And I believe like my dad would periodically check in, right? Like you all the way out there in Texas and he is all the way up there. Like, did you put him on child support yet? Because if he win the lottery, like child support, it's gonna back pay.
But let me tell you why, because what you're saying, because we're talking about change and development, right?
Right.
In terms of like following your inner voice. And we were talking about the prior generation, and that mindset is like a self-sovereign mindset, right? Where you're not able to see any other perspectives.
Right.
And what ends up happening is it causes a lot of conflict in relationships, or what you were intended to do sometimes ends up being received the wrong way, which is why a lot of us are saying that we need to heal from our parents, because they're clear answers for anything. Like, if we're not together anymore, like, your ass is going on child support. And I think that what you're speaking to is, while that situation changed you, what does it mean for you to develop, one, as a parent, but more importantly, how has it supported Neek in developing? And I'll be honest, now that I can see it today, like, I understand your decision. But a few years, I ain't had no kids anyway, though. So to me, the only thing that made sense, I'm not going to be raising a child by myself. You're going to have to help out. But I do think that, like, you deciding to do that, I see the benefit to today, because you've cultivated more than just a need for money.
Right, for financial support.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, now let's talk about what my inner voice told me, right? My inner voice was more so, what is it that you want, right? And I've never doubted my ability to take care of myself or my child, right? So when it comes to money, like that wasn't necessarily what I wanted. So what I wanted was my child to have a relationship with her father, and what money do that? Not necessarily, right? Because somebody can drop you a bag, or somebody could drop you $20, $30, $50, and there still be no relationship, right? And I guess when I think about what was good for Dominique, right? Mm-hmm. So it was, what did I want? I wanted them to have a relationship. What's best for my child? What's best for my child is for her to be able to pick up the phone, call her dad, and her dad receive those calls, or her dad call her.
Put somebody on child support. That's the first thing to make somebody get mad.
Right, like, without any restraint.
I gotta go to work. I ain't got no time to talk to these kids. So I gotta go to work because you put me on child support. Right, I don't have time because I got to pay them people. Them people keeps calling.
And I get, and that's the part that I get, right? Because what type of relationship will you have if you go to jail? If you can't meet the demands of paying child support, or if you're so stressed and focused on paying child support, how can you truly show up when necessary, right? So, that's how I knew
you've cultivated today because I feel like what I'm hearing you say, I chose not to, because I guess, one, not inflict pain. I was mindful about how my actions may cause another person to respond.
Cause two people to respond.
Right. And some people may say that I don't know where I'm going at, but because I'm processing like what, because I don't even know, because in my opinion, I think that this is my opinion. I think that you were probably too young to know what you were cultivating, but when I see what you cultivated, I'm like, wow. But I think it goes back to like following your inner voice, because the other thing is you really didn't have any control over whether you would be able to cultivate that or not. But it's like really knowing like your intentions and like not allowing this situation to change your heart. Girl, wipe your eye.
I'm done with this episode. Like,
no,
in your outburst.
Wipe your eye, because it's just wipe it.
I know it is.
She trying to hide her nails, y'all.
Y'all gotta cut that out.
No, we are not.
So
She's trying
serious.
to hide
y'all
your nails. I'm not just gonna sit
out.
here and look at that eye watering like that. Just
look, y'all gonna have to cut all that out. But anyways, we is gonna move on to basically you saying like I was too young to know what I was cultivating, right? And I think a lot of times when it comes to following our inner voice, right, it's not knowing or not being sure about the outcome, right? But also understanding who you are as a person. I am the type of person that X. And I know that when I say what is it that I wanted my child to have a relationship that wasn't restricted. That wasn't restricted based on things that I had caused or inflict, and allow him to be a parent that he wanted to be whenever that was. So did I know that they will have the relationship that they have today? No, and actually it has been up and it has been up and down, right? It really has been up and down.
All right. So what you were saying is following your inner voice sometimes feels it can feel very uncomfortable, and
Right.
it feels like uncertainty, meaning that I don't know for sure if this is going to support like what I'm saying. And I think that is so important, because I was talking to a mom the other day, and I respect her. Like, she is really keen on like gentle parenting. And the other day she had told me that her son had punched her.
Okay.
She was like, and girl, he landed. And she was like, I teach them that your hands are for love, but like I had to pop him. And she was like, I didn't have to pop him, but I chose to pop him, right? And I think that made me laugh, right? Because I don't believe in beating my kids either, but I'm not saying that I will not pop them, right? And I think that if you get caught up in like modern or pop therapy in terms of like what's the best way to raise your kids, I think a lot of people would say that they probably don't believe in like hitting their children. But I think the complexities of it change. You might get a pop. Like, and she didn't beat him, but am I gonna allow you to be beating on me? Like, and I think that a lot of people will probably tell you like this is the proper way to handle it, or and you could tell in that moment she was questioning, even though she had done it, she still was like, I mean, I don't know if I did the right thing or not. Like,
well, good thing she did hit him, because if he was to hit somebody else's kid,
you hit my kid gonna hit you.
They gonna hit you back. So,
I tell my kid that because. And my kid ain't the one that's hitting me. But if you hit my kid, what I teach is hit their ass back.
I don't teach my kids to hit people back, but
your son might hit. Your son liable to hit somebody first. That's why.
But it's in their genes, baby. They knock your top off.
So I think it's feeling uncomfortable and not having anything to validate you. I think that's the biggest thing, right? Like that inner voice, there is nothing to validate that inner voice.
And sometimes listening to that inner voice can feel you can end up feeling a lot of things, right? You can end up feeling alone in your decisions. You can end up feeling silly in your decisions, especially when things start to look a certain way, because I can tell you, there has been times where I've questioned myself, like, am I truly doing the right thing? But also
the people that, I don't mean to cut you off, but the people that came before, it's because I would tell you, like, the older that I get and I start to, like, try to understand, like, the mysteries of the world, I guess. I have so much respect for the people that came before us because they just didn't have what we have today.
Right.
And when you talk about there was nothing to validate, like, when you talk about when people decided to escape from slavery, there wasn't no validation. There was nothing that said that if you escape, that you would possibly get freedom.
Like, or you wouldn't get killed, right? Because
exactly. I think that is so important. And I think that I'm for somehow this get ready to turn into, like, when you're so loyal, because there were people that are also really loyal too, right? They're like loyal to, like, being in the house, for example, or like, this is good treatment. Was that
their inner voice? Or
no, that wasn't an inner voice. It was socialization. And I think that is so important because I think that we're so grateful to have the resources that everything that has been built for us, I just, like, sometimes I'm like, don't lose that. Like, I feel like we're losing it. And I'm talking about black people, because I don't know nothing about being white besides, like, the clients that I have that I absolutely adore. But I only know,
you know, a lot about the human experience.
I know a lot about the human experience, and I think that when you are following your inner voice, there's nobody to validate you. And when I think about, like, what our parents did, there was nothing to validate what they were doing. They were really following their inner voice. And there's a level of faith that comes with that. Like, if you're always looking for a how-to guide, right, that's the first sign to not following your inner voice. Because going back to that mom, like, she could have found a how-to guide. Like, people would tell you, sit on the floor. Like, right, sit on the floor with your child. Let's talk about it. Allow them to have that feeling that they're no, because I see it on Instagram, and I'm not saying that I disagree.
Like, let your kid express their anger. Send them into
their
but
room. I'm not finna be your punching bag, though. I'm not finna be your punching bag, because I'm not finna be your punching bag.
Right.
Because you still, I mean, there are a lot of, because we're trying to facilitate development. We're trying to manage boundaries and expectations. You are also, like, preserving, like, what your role is. It's no different from running a business, right? Like, we all have roles, and that doesn't change just because you have, like, a family. Like, I'm the adult and you're the child. Now, that doesn't mean that that we do it the way that our parents did it. Like, my house, my rules. Like, what is it? Spare the rod, spoil the child. Like, I'm not saying do that, because I don't believe in that stuff either. But I do think that, like, you cannot lose that inner voice.
Right. So I guess what we've said so far is, whenever you are listening to your inner voice, one, is going to be very uncomfortable. And it really may be contrary to what society says that you should actually be doing in a situation.
Right. I had just thought about this whole idea of being loyal to, like, ideas, organizations, or, like, what self-help looks like. And it made me think, and a lot of people may disagree with this, but I personally, I'm not even gonna say we don't teach Caden that he's black. Caden's 8 years old. He sees color because he thinks that I am peach, and he thinks that his dad and him are brown, but he does not see race. And when I talk about facilitating development, I know that a lot of parents, they say, I dread that conversation with having to tell my kids, like, what it means to be black. I think that what we end up doing is, one, that ain't your inner voice anymore. To me, it's not your inner voice, because there's something to validate it, meaning if I don't tell them this, then this is what happens. Now, when I think about, like, where Caden is developmentally, he doesn't understand race. He understands color. Now he is starting to come home and talk about Ruby Bridges. He thinks that Martin Luther King has like solved all of the problems about people mistreating people because of skin color. But I want to build my baby up, because there are a lot of things in general that I think that just by being a human that you're going to experience that I can't necessarily save him from. Because when I think about like how I grew up, I mean, I knew what it meant to be Black because you heard a lot of conversations, but I also think that to some degree it instilled like inferiority. Like I tried to stay away from white folks like all my life until I really just couldn't stay away from white people. Like, and it got to a point to where it was like so uncomfortable. I don't want to instill that in Caden. And I'm not saying that I'm not gonna have that we won't have conversations with Caden, but it's about timing. Like his worldview doesn't look like my worldview or even his dad's worldview. So to me it's like when I hear people say like, you know, like Black joy and all of those, I understand like what people are saying, but just from the way that our family is, like to me the Blackness just radiates like within us. Like the experience that Caden gets amongst us and his family, like that is the Black experience. That is like the Black joy. And I don't know where I'm going with that, because I was saying that.
Well, I wanted to ask you, so your inner voice is really telling you, I don't necessarily need to tell my son that he's Black for him to be Black. And if I tell him that he's Black, that is me writing his narrative before he has the ability to to experience being Black without the extra stuff, that you're inferior to another culture, you're inferior to another skin color.
You got to work 10 times harder. Like right. I don't want to push that narrative on him. And I guess, how do I know that it's my inner voice? Because sometimes I do feel like I have to teach him that based off of what I see happening around us. Because I ain't no fool now, child. Like I ain't no, I ain't no fool.
Right.
But that's just not where my head is when it comes to that. And it makes me even go back and think about being loyal to certain things. Kaden got in trouble one time this year. And I'm playing one time because Kaden don't really get in trouble. And this person at the school, Black person, a Black woman, and she was like, I just want to let you know that Caden scratched a girl, and she was like, it was, you know, it's them, and we got to make sure that we handle this. And she was like, because you know we don't get second chances. And I had to like marinate on that conversation, because I understood what she was saying. But I'm not asking for you to be a part of my business. That's not what I'm teaching. And to assume that that's what I'm teaching because we both look alike, like I'm not loyal to that. That is where another place where I decide to follow my own inner voice. Like I couldn't sleep that night because I was like, how do I go back and have this conversation with her without dismissing that I understand what the Black experience is for so many people. But I ended up going back to having her the conversation. Like I understood what you were doing. And then after she looked at the camera and come and find out that they say that Caden did not scratch that girl, I told her that I appreciate, but Caden has his own village. I understood where you were coming from, but you had an opportunity to show him that Black boys do get a second chance. She went like, I mean, I thought that the punishment was like extreme.
Right.
But I understood, like her intent was good.
Right.
But because follows,
of her experience,
because of her experience, her socialization, that's the way she decided to handle with that. Not with my child. Mm-mm.
Right. Mm-mm. Because I think that goes back to responsibility, right? To where we have the responsibility to create the changes that we want to see in the world. And if we're not listening to our inner voices, we fall victim to those socialized mindsets. And because that's true, right? She had the opportunity to show Caden that Black boys do get a second chance.
Right.
Black boys are able to bounce back from mistakes or false
And we don't feel
accusations, because
inferior to any other to
if we're
other
being
race.
honest,
Be honest,
our
girl.
Black men do be being falsely accused. So they do have the ability to bounce back from those things. It's just the people that are placed in these positions of power have a responsibility to listen to their inner voice and not allow society to tell them how to handle it when they see it differently.
Say that again, girl. That part.
That part.
That part. What was that part? Say that again. Because you mentioned power, and we had talked about that the last time too. Because she was in a position of power,
right?
And I understood what she was doing. Like I got it, but she was in a position of power. But
just because we get it, that doesn't mean it's right.
Right.
Just because we get it, it doesn't mean that it's right. And that's why I think we are having a conversation about following your inner voice, because it is sometimes going against those right narratives. It is sometimes about it's actually where the development happens with change, right? When you do something different to get that bigger outcome. I don't know if that's the word that I'm looking for.
Capacity.
Right.
Your capacity to be able to take on ambiguity. Ambiguity.
What the heck are
ambiguity. Did I say ambiguity?
I can't even say it now because you didn't.
Okay, well that part, that
ambiguous,
word. I don't know. You say ambiguous. I can say that. I can't say ambiguity. Oh, I think I just said it. Okay. No, whatever. Uncertainty, but it's your capacity to be able to take on uncertainty, because she was also concerned about her job too.
The gray.
Yeah, it's the gray.
I have this Caucasian mom who expects a certain type of punishment to happen. And I need to facilitate that, because if not, she's going to go to my boss.
And it wasn't about a
Caucasian
parent too. It was about just a parent.
Right.
Like I don't really think it had anything to do, but because
you are a parent too, right?
Yeah, I'm a parent too.
And had she been thinking about it just being a parent, she would also been thinking about, I expect my son to get his due process, right?
Right.
To really go back and look at the cameras before accusations are being made, before punishments are being handed out.
Right.
So, I
think, on the other side of this, right? Because following your inner voice doesn't require like validation. Like even this podcast and like coming back on social media and stuff. Having I don't want to talk about that. Let me go back to what I was about to say. Like following your inner voice, because I always like to look at the other side of it too. Like right. The conversation that we were just having about like being a parent and that situation that occurred with Caden. Mm-hmm. Also understanding the other side of it, I may very well have to have the conversation with Caden one day. Like, I think that's following your inner voice does not mean that you
block something off totally or take it off the table, right?
Exactly.
As situations change or deem something different, you show up different. But I think that is being able to allow ourselves to experience whatever that inner voice is trying to lead us to or tell us to do. And really being open to change and doing something different when called to.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Yep, you said it. So we just sat here and just had just like a conversation,
right?
And I'm thinking in my head, how do we summarize it for people, right? How do you follow your inner voice, or how do you know when you're following your inner voice? And I'll tell you what I took from it was, when you're following your inner voice, you're not seeking any external validation. And when I say external validation, that means you don't need it from a professional. And that could be the therapist, a coach, a doctor, or whoever the expert deems to be. You don't need that external validation. Like, you just have to trust that you're moving in the direction. So not needing external validation is one. Not feeling like I think the other thing that you were saying is when we are not following our inner voice, we tend to think that we're doing it. Your inner voice can trick you, basically making you think that you're doing something right.
Well, no, your inner voice can trick you and make you feel like you're doing something wrong, right? Because there is no validation behind it. There is no support.
But no, the validation can trick you into thinking that you are following your inner voice because you feel that it's right. Like most people, like if we talk about like the socialized mindset, because your world feels good for the most part, like this is the right way to do it. And I think that there's a sense of confidence and security in like, this is the right way to do it.
Right.
And I think that whenever you probably feel like this is the right way to do it, it probably ain't your inner voice. Because when I make decisions or whatever, I never know it. Like at this point in my life, right? I would say there's always a level of uncertainty to where I'm like, I don't know if I'm doing it right.
Right.
That's why I say that inner voice is tricky because I think that 9 times out of 10. If you feel secure in like the choice that you're making and you don't feel like
uncertain,
it's probably really not your inner voice.
Right. I agree.
And that's why they say it's hard to develop beyond that stage. Because if I feel comfortable in what I'm saying, you ain't gonna be able to tell me nothing.
Right.
It's gonna be really hard to reach me, which is why a lot of people change, but developmentally they don't grow beyond that, which is going back to that dysfunctional family. A lot of people are stuck right there. They can't see anything else beyond that because somebody has said that you're making waves and all of the people before you are wrong because they were dysfunctional. And that's not necessarily your inner voice, because what ends up happening, I'll speak from my personal experience. I said I was wrapping this up, but speak from my personal experience. When you feel like you're making waves and you're breaking the generational curse, what you end up losing in the process sometimes is compassion, kindness, love. And my inner voice is rooted in all of that, or at least I would like for it to be rooted in all of that. And it goes back to what you were saying with child support, like compassion.
I'm the type of person that extends compassion.
I am compassion. I am kindness. I am love. And I think that our inner voice is reflective of those things. Like, I understand what people are saying because some of that shit that they did in the past was some bullshit. Like, I get it.
Right.
But if we're talking about really meeting people where they are, it's not about just saying, oh, people did the best that they could.
Right.
It's not really about that.
It's about the compassion, because what compassion does is extend understanding.
Yeah.
Based off of what you had access to. It's not just saying, okay, that it is what it is. It's really understanding.
Right. So I guess we could wrap it up because I did. What did you take from it though? What did you take from it? What was your takeaway?
Really, really a lot of the same things, right? Listening to your inner voice can feel uncertain. Listening to your inner voice can really feel like you're alone in your decisions. And listening to your inner voice may go against all things that you possibly have seen or heard or know to be true, right? Yeah. And also listening to your inner voice, there is space to redo it. There is no definites, right? You're not playing on the definites of the world. You're saying, okay, I'll allow. So I guess that's what
I take that back. That the people before us was listening to their.
No, there was a lot of socialized mindset.
Yeah, there was a lot of socialization because even beating came from probably other things. But in a lot of ways, they still did listen to. I think that when you talk about how we got out of slavery and how it originated, I think that was a sign of listening to your inner voice. Right. But I think like to continue to like not allow your kids to express themselves, or like my house, my rules, or spare the rod, spoil the child. That was not a sign of inner voice. I think that it was just continuing to do the same narrative that sometimes wasn't like really compassionate and kindness. Because yeah, I putting it all into perspective, because I don't want to. Yeah, I'm done with that, girl. Go ahead and close us out. Go ahead, please.
I'm
Go
gonna
ahead
let
and
you close us out. Well, thank y'all for listening. Follow us at Success is Complicated on Instagram, and thank you.
All right, y'all. We'll see you next time. Bye. We out.